The sales calls I was having a year or two ago are very different than the sales calls I'm having now because people kind of already are convinced that I can solve their problem because they've seen some of my podcasts. It's been really a game changer for us this year. And let me be clear, like before last year, before we decided to niche on law firms, we really weren't doing a great job with our content. I don't think we really had much content at all. And I think after like the third guest podcast I was on, a law firm reached out to me and I essentially one call closed them. Like they were like, I already know what you do. You clearly know what you're talking about. Let's just talk pricing. If I'm good with, how you guys operate, like I'm good. Let's get started. And that's when I was like, oh, wow. Okay. I need to like quintuple down on this. This is something that we need to just make a huge priority. So I view podcast or webinar or any like long form piece of content as the mechanism for other content pieces. Like find one medium that you can do fairly consistently and then use that to create other content pieces across, your website, social media, so on and so forth. So I think the real benefit was the mindset shift that came from that experience where I was like, oh my gosh, this is what I need to be prioritizing more and more and more of my time on.
So how you doing? I'm pumped to be chatting today.
I'm doing great, Lewis. Thanks for having me on today. Excited to talk through things.
Yeah, I've learned a lot from both yourself and Jake since in kind of the years that we've known each other in the agency world, and we've learned a lot from the different things that you all have learned and then mastered and then kind of passed down to us as wisdom and best practices. So hopefully there's a bit more of that transfer happening today, and then likewise whoever's listening can continue to benefit from the conversation.
For sure. And Jake, by the way, is my co-founder and COO.
Yeah, one question I have, just kind of coming off of things we were talking about before we started recording, where we're like, oh, we should just, carry this on when we are recording because it's valuable, is some of the changes you've made to your positioning and strategy to kind of help yourself stand out from other PPC agencies. So maybe elaborating on how you've thought about positioning, how you've changed that from how you've done it in the past and some of the benefits you've seen.
Sure. So for context, I've been at this now for coming up on 6 years. So Jake, who we mentioned, my business partner and I founded a PPC agency, Pareto PPC, back in February 2019. And, we've gone through multiple iterations with that company, but overall, before last year, we were positioned to just work with people on their digital advertising campaigns. So Google, Meta, Microsoft ads. And we didn't really have a clearly defined ICP, ideal client profile. The only thing we knew was we wanted to work with companies that were spending a certain amount of budget on digital advertising. That was really kind of the criteria to get us interested in a potential partnership. But about a year ago, we realized that kind of generalist agency framework was just no longer going to work as we look to scale for a couple reasons. Number one, it didn't do us any favors in terms of our kind of marketing differentiation. Like we were kind of one of many, right? There were a lot of alternatives to us. And then on kind of the flip side of that, it was going to be a requirement for us scaling so that we could build a lot of like process around this is how we deliver results for this type of client, right? So we made the decision, I think it was back in May or June last year, to niche down our service to lawyers and law firms. And the reason for that was because number one, a lot of our clients were law firms and legal professionals. They were some of our highest LTV clients. They were the best to work with. They kind of just like let us do our thing. And so long as we were getting results, they kind of just stayed out of our way and let us, run the show, right? The second thing was both Jake and I had experience in-house as a CMO and COO at a large injury law firm in Philadelphia while we were founding Pareto PPC. That was actually kind of our day job, if you will, when we founded the company. So we already had a lot of expertise in just the legal space. So the decision was kind of clear, like this makes sense for us to double down on. And since then, we've really virtually all of our content has been focused on legal marketing, legal analytics, legal PPC, things of that nature. Our outbound has been solely focused on, law firms that fit that ICP, which is, injury law firms in the top 20 US metros, doing somewhere between $5 and $20 million a year in revenue, that are already investing in Google Ads. So there's like a lot of check boxes that need to happen there. But that's really who we've been focusing on now. And, I'm proud to say that from a biz dev perspective, this is the best year that we've ever had. And I think it's because we are being very intentional now in terms of who we serve. It's giving us pricing power when we're going through negotiations where we can say, look, there's not many other alternatives out there that, not only do legal PPC, but we also have this analytics backend or product that we are selling our law firm clients to effectively enable them to track the ROI of their PPC marketing investments, right? Whereas other agencies like ours, they're just sending the leads. They're not really helping with any of the attribution or things like that. So I know that was a long-winded answer, but essentially, doubling down on the legal niche has, helped from a biz dev perspective. It's helped from a content perspective. I kind of have a narrow focus now in terms of the types of things that I'm building content for. And then from an operational perspective as well, it's really helped us, clarify and define what are the actual activities that we're engaging in for our clients that yield results. So I know that was long-winded, but I hope that answers your question.
No, it's very helpful. I mean, what I aim to accomplish with these interviews for the people listening to them, right? And as we narrow in on our kind of ideal persona, maybe some of this will also get more narrow, because people might be listening to this at a number of levels of maturity. But really, I just want to build all of the beliefs that would lead someone to kind of see our services. Like, that's the long game, right? Of putting out content is to nurture people into whatever funnel that you have. And for us, where does someone need to be, right? They need to understand the value of producing content. They need to see us as people who are knowledgeable about how to do it, why to do it, etc. So hearing stories like yourself of like, okay, so if you're in this position, this conversation is one going to, demonstrate to people, here's yet another case study of someone who's using content effectively in their business. And here's also, right, more than just that, the premise of, okay, great, it's useful. Here's right ways and wrong ways to go about it. And here's, if this is true about your business, it's going to become doubly effective versus
Right.
if it's not true. Because there's a lot of people just generically, like you may have mentioned, just putting out content about, here's what PPC is. But if you can have that differentiated angle, which is like contextualizing all of your content to the narrow subset of people you want to work with, then when they read it, it has a different effect because it's just already, you want to not have to you want to make it easy to buy from you. You want to be easy to say yes to.
Right.
And so it's like, okay, great. This person understands PPC, but do they understand PPC as to how it relates to my business? Now you're, by putting a piece of content out that's like, here's a really specific example. And, you probably get more specific than I'm generalizing to here of here's the story of how to use PPC in this particular way, in this particular angle. And then 100 of the right people read that. And now that's effectively having a conversation that would have been had on a sales call that's already happened before the call. And it becomes a bit more of order taking.
Correct. The sales calls I was having a year or two ago are very different than the sales calls I'm having now because people kind of already are convinced that I can solve their problem because they've seen some of my podcasts. They've engaged with some of my shorts either on YouTube or on LinkedIn. They were a guest on a webinar that I hosted or co-hosted, right? So, it's been really a game changer for us this year. And let me be clear, like before last year, before we decided to niche on law firms, we really weren't doing a great job with our content. I don't think we really had much content at all. We had a website, we had some blog posts. I was doing some LinkedIn posting, like, just text and like giving thoughts on like things in the PPC industry. But I actually stopped doing that because most of my audience were just PPC professionals, just like me. I wasn't building an audience of potential clients. So it's like I was getting the positive feedback loop of like, oh wow, my posts are getting a lot of views, I'm getting a lot of likes. But when I kind of looked in the mirror, I was like, wait a minute, I'm just getting a lot of engagement from people that I will never be able to sell to, that I will never be able to help with their businesses. They're just people like me that are interested in this content. So um, yeah, it's really, I would say, like September, October of last year is when we started to get serious with our content. And the first kind of thing that we did, or rather that I did, was I started doing guest podcasts. So I joined people on their podcasts. So I got to like tap into their audiences. And I think after like the third guest podcast I was on, a a law firm reached out to me, and I essentially one call closed them. Like they were
Hmm.
like, I already know what you do. You clearly know what you're talking about. Let's just talk pricing. If I'm good with, how you guys operate, like I'm good. Let's get started. Um, and that's when I was like, oh wow, okay, I need to like quintuple down on this. This is something that we need to just make a huge priority. So since then, I started our own podcast. I think I'm on episode 18 for this year. So I'd really like to get 25 done by the end of this year. At the current run rate, I should be able to do that no problem. Um, we've done a couple of webinars, which have been really, really great. But I view podcast or webinar or any like long form piece of content as the mechanism for other content pieces. Like find one medium that you can do, fairly consistently, and then use that to create other content pieces across, your website, social media, so on and so forth. So the podcast has been a phenomenal mechanism for like, shorts on social media channels. It's been a phenomenal mechanism for outreach. So we're actually running a cold outreach campaign right now of lawyers in our kind of our ideal client profile. And instead of me trying to hard sell them on like, hey, let's hop on a call and talk about, services, it's, hey, it seems like you're doing a lot of interesting things at your law firm. I'd love to bring you on the podcast and ask you questions about how you've been successful in the legal space. And it's this like soft foot in the door type of just it's really just networking, right? But
Hmm.
it's checking multiple boxes because now I have another guest for the podcast. I'm going to get some good, maybe 5, 20 to 30-second clips from this 30, 45 minute conversation, and I've just built a relationship. I've just established connection with someone. Then they're going to reshare the content that I post, and it's just like you got to start doing something that enables you to put all of these other content pieces out across various mediums. And for us, it's been podcasts. It's been super super valuable this year.
Yeah, I think everything needs kind of a seed,
Yeah,
and so some people do current events content. So like we write a lot of newsletters that are just curated headlines. A
yeah,
lot of people are familiar with the Morning Brew. They're familiar with TLDR. There's just some pretty popular publications. But do something like that on behalf of a business, just narrowed down to like whatever bubbles make sense for their readership. And so we're just capturing the seed of what's happening in the like. There's something that you're sampling.
yeah,
Um, and so for us, we're kind of the same way for what's becoming our own newsletter is because we don't want to write a newsletter, about newsletters as much as we want to just provide interesting, educational, valuable content about kind of the value of the different types of things that we do. And so that's what I'm doing is this podcast is something, this is like the source. This is like the catalyst. This is the original point. And then
right,
as long as you have only one, like, so kind of asking yourself, like, what do you like to do? What's easy for you to do? And still, ultimately has to be valuable. And then just the secret to being everywhere is actually just to be in one place consistently and then have a process for repurposing it everywhere else.
correct. Correct. And that's something that I'm still working on right now. The person that's managing my social media, I actually just recorded a loom for them a couple hours ago, basically saying, look, I want to streamline our content. What's the way to say it? Content creation slash repurposing process, right? So for us, I think it's going to be some combination of audio to text transcription. Whatever podcast I'm on or whatever shorts that I get from that podcast, this person will kind of plug that into a transcription software. I think Otter AI is like the most popular one today. Get all of that audio transcribed, then plug it into like Chat GPT and say, make a nice summary of this podcast into a format that's going to perform well on LinkedIn, or a format that's going to perform well on Meta, or a format that's going to perform well on the website, like transcribing it into a blog. We're not doing we're repurposing it for our blog. We're repurposing our podcast right now for shorts on YouTube. We're doing short form video content on LinkedIn and Meta as well, but that's really it. I want to start using it for more like text posts and for
Yep.
blog. And so that's something that we're gonna kind of hopefully get into motion in the next few weeks. But you're exactly right. Like, find something that you can do consistently as your content creation hub, and then create a process that extracts that core piece of content and gets you onto three, four, five other media platforms.
This has all been very helpful for understanding the role it plays within your business. In terms of the clients that you're working with, do you see a difference in lift for or PPC campaigns just easier and more effective if you're working for a company that's producing content? Does that
Yes,
make a difference in terms of like the whole cycle?
absolutely. It's actually something that we are vetting out more in the sales process now. And what I mean by that is I have an increased hesitance to work with a company if they don't have some type of content strategy underway. If we have to like pull teeth and say like, look, we don't have assets for YouTube, or we don't have video assets for Meta or TikTok. It's essentially like you're giving us the car, but you're not putting any gas in it, right? And so that's not to say that we're like not helping our clients with content ideas, like, hey, these are the types of ads or videos or banners or things like that that we should be creating. But ultimately, what our job is as a digital ad agency, it's to um, you know it's to magnify or put gasoline on the existing fire of the business. That's what a digital ad campaign is. And if we don't have good content that we can put out into feeds, good content that we can push people to on landing pages, then our, it's not going to perform as best as our clients want it to, right? So they our clients, hear the ones that struggle with this, hear about it a lot from us, and we'll typically recommend them to strategic partners that can help them with things like video production or editing, stuff like that. But typically, most of our clients just need a good foundation of evergreen content. So that's content that like can run pretty much year round. We're not switching it out every week or two. I'll talk specifically like about law firm clients. For like top of funnel campaigns, like campaigns that you're going after people that might not be in need of legal services. You might want to run some like video ads that are talking about like informational topics, like what to do if you get in a car accident, or who do you call if your doctor botches your surgery, like things like that. And then like kind of further down the funnel, let's say someone has expressed interest in speaking with a lawyer, but they haven't quite contacted anyone yet. You could do things like, all right, what's it like working with our law firm, like FAQs, client testimonials, settlement results, things like that. And then at the very bottom of the funnel, it's like attorney profile videos, like, hey, this is who I am. This is, what I care about as an attorney. This is my track record. You could do, more like punchy, like contact us today, like very strong call to action videos. But my point is like, it's not like they need to be creating content every single day, week, month, but they need to at least invest in some initial foundation so that we can build campaigns to reach people at those various stages of the marketing funnel that I just described.
I love that. I think breaking it down into the stages of the funnel and that's a very helpful kind of checklist. There's I found in my journey there's just an infinite checklist of just things, and there's different mental models that help you slice and dice different checklists. So it's like, do I have something that addresses every stage of the funnel? And then another one is kind of thinking of every key conversion rate in our business. Like,
Yeah.
do I have a piece of content? It content can be public, external, or internal, kind of depending on what you want to say. For how am I converting? What content do I have to convert a current customer into a referral partner? Like, that's a step in the process.
Right.
What is converting someone from how do I convert someone who's maybe just a warm prospect into a newsletter subscriber? How do I convert a newsletter subscriber into a booked call? How am I converting people who are on our booked call and were lukewarm? What am I doing to eventually convert them into a client just because it wasn't a timing thing? So thinking of like every key drop off point and what piece of content you have to bridge each of those major gaps is the way I've been thinking about it lately.
Yeah, and I know this might be cliche, you've probably heard it before, but it's really helpful to go through the thought exercise of what is my end goal and then working backwards from that, right? So, if my goal for a law firm is to get them more clients, you have to think through that journey from like, all right, I'm not even in need of legal services right now because I haven't gotten in an accident, all the way down to, I'm signing a retainer agreement with an attorney right now. Um, and that applies to law firms, e-commerce, B2B, like any type of business. It's really helpful to go through that thought exercise because what it'll do is it'll reveal gaps in your marketing funnel. Maybe I don't have a campaign that's going after middle of the funnel type of folks right now. Maybe I don't have a landing page that is doing a good job of converting low funnel traffic into leads, right? But these are important things to think through, and I see it a lot, like where again any business is running like a top of funnel campaign, and they're pushing it to a landing page that's like it's basically like a do or die landing page. Hey, I know you just watched this video about what to do if you get in a car accident, but like here, call us today, contact us right now. It's like that CTA, that user experience does not correspond to where that person is in their journey. And if you don't get that right, you're just going to, um, you know, misspend your budget. You're not going to get the results you want. And what I commonly see is you're just going to kill that campaign after like a week or two because you're not being realistic about what the objective is of that campaign. And again, I'm talking about purely like top of funnel campaigns. The goal of those is simple. Like that's to build awareness. That's to start bringing people into your funnel. You should not expect that they're going to contact you right away. You should not expect that you're going to be able to convert them into, a client or into a case or whatever your business is, convert them into a buying customer, right? So you need to be really realistic with those goals that you set, because like I said, if you don't, you're going to launch these things and you're going to be very disappointed after a week or two when my YouTube prospecting campaign got 0 conversions last month. It's like, yeah, it's because that campaign has a fundamentally different goal than your Google pay-per-click campaigns or the retargeting campaign that you're running on Facebook and Instagram.
Yeah, I think I'll just do a few more questions here. We like to keep these somewhat short and sweet. So you mentioned the tripling down on podcasting, the tripling down on a niche. Have there been any other big clicks or shifts? Again, it could be for your own efforts or for the efforts that you do on behalf of clients in terms of principles you're taking more seriously than ever, mistakes you were making in the past that you just kind of decided this is the year we don't make that mistake anymore. Anything else that's been like a big emphasis on the marketing side?
We've finally added CRO to our service offering. We kind of always said we would do CRO for like, the last 6 years, but we weren't really like upselling or rather cross-selling our clients on CRO services. So for the listeners, CRO is conversion rate optimization. Basically, we're managing all these ad campaigns. We're pushing them to pages for our to our clients' websites, and we weren't really doing a lot with like optimizing the landing pages for our clients up until about a year ago. But we finally added that as a service that's really enabled us to improve the performance of our campaigns. Our clients are happier. We're happier because we've increased our contract sizes. And it's just made us stickier. Like now we're not just PPC, but we're like PPC plus CRO. We're helping them increase their conversion rates on their landing pages. So that's been a good shift. We've gotten a lot better with not budging on like kind of our contract terms. We've increased our prices over the last 12 months too, which has increased profitability. Have I missed out on deals because of it? Yes, but it ensures that the clients that I am working with, I know that they're serious, and I know that I'm going to get a positive ROI from the relationship. So that's been really important too. And then kind of going hand in hand with that, I alluded to this before, but just being increasingly more selective in terms of who we work with. It seems counterintuitive, but by niching down and increasing that selectivity, we've actually grown faster. We've been more profitable because we're not bringing on poor fit clients. My team's not sinking their time into an account that has no hope of renewing, right? So that's been really beneficial for us as well. So that's more like business admin stuff, but it's certainly helped us this year.
I love it. I think if we had more time, I'd be curious to learn more about the kind of your webinar process, because that's something I'm starting to think about putting more effort into. I love these conversational podcasts, but there are definitely certain types of guests with certain expertise that, and they'd be certainly willing to spend, an hour making like a basic slideshow and doing more of like a prepared, semi-scripted video content. So that's something that's coming up. That's actually a campaign that we're putting more effort into, because we got a customer like this. We're like, that's actually probably a great segment. Is law firms that are running webinars. It's like they're paying to acquire email addresses, and a lot of them don't do that infinite nurture of a newsletter.
Right.
And so that's a campaign we're starting. Is like targeting law firms that are running Facebook ads to webinars, and just being like, hey, after the webinar, do you put these people in an email list you're maintaining or not? If not, you should be, and we'll plug in. So that's just kind of me thinking out loud, but that's something we have cooking up.
Yeah, my only advice is just to start doing it. I wish I started doing a webinar a year ago, years ago, not a year ago, years ago. But it's the type of thing. Once your first one's going to suck. It's fine. The first one always sucks. But if you just start being consistent with it, it could be a real, new biz driver for you, or for law firms, right? Like I was talking more for like our businesses, but for law firms as well. It's not a strategy that I've run with a law firm account before, but the concept is very similar, where you're talking about a specific problem, how to solve that problem. You're giving away that kind of thought leadership, that knowledge. And really, it's a mechanism to collect first party data that you can then throw into some type of nurture sequence, and hopefully ultimately end up converting those folks into a client. So that's exciting. I hope you guys have a lot of success with the webinar.
Yeah, thank you. My last question here, and this has been one of my favorites, is asking you to share the story about the most impactful piece of content that you've created for yourself, or that you've seen across kind of your years in the business. It could be, impact, can be pure viral, right? This just, most of my videos get 5 views. This got 5,000 times as many views as normal, or whatever that scaling factor is for you. Or it could be, I usually get a couple comments and thumbs up. This got I got 25 emails telling me this was incredible. And so it could be financial, it could be just pure vanity, number of views, could be conversation starter, just a piece of content that I don't want to say it was a turning point in your life. It's not necessarily that extent, but it just splashed way harder than your typical piece of content.
Yeah, I think it's that third guest podcast I did that I was telling you about last year, where I had a one call close. Someone, listened to that podcast, reached out to me directly, hopped on a call with them, and they were already ready to go. And, obviously there was, revenue benefit to my agency from that transaction, But I think the real benefit was the mindset shift that came from that experience where I was like, oh my gosh, this is what I need to be prioritizing more and more and more of my time on. So that I would say is the most impactful piece of content that I've done, because it forced me to start getting serious about content marketing in general.
Yeah. Was that like a big name podcast, or was it like a pretty modest podcast that's
It
still
was
managed? Because I think
modest. Yeah.
that's the thing too, right? That's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Is it's not like you're like, yeah, yeah, for the next year trying to get on, Joe Rogan or Tucker show, one of these big ones. But it's no, I just like was on, a podcast that a lot of business owners would probably be able to book themselves on podcasts of similar size and credibility, because it only takes, you know, that one person listening to drive the outcome.
That's it. And if I don't get a client from it, well, at least I put an hour against creating a brand new set of content that can be repurposed next month. That's how I rationalize it. It's like I'm
Yep.
doing it. It's almost like working out, right? Like these days, I'm 35, going on 36. Like I'm not working out to have a six pack. I'm not working out, to show off. I'm working out because it's just like it's health hygiene. It's like something that I know I need to be doing daily just to keep things moving forward. That's how I view about that's how I view content too. It's like I just need to be doing this. It's like brushing my teeth and just be
Yep.
consistent with it. And eventually, it's just going to get to a critical mass where I have, 1,000 podcast episodes. I have so many blog pieces and, talking very specifically about these topics in a way that no one else is. That obviously is the end goal, but I'm not really thinking about that end goal because it's going to take a very long time to get to. I'm just doing this now because it's something I know I need to do.
I think that's great. When you go, it's the same idea we were speaking to at the beginning of having one kind of anchor piece of content that drives everything else. Even being a guest on someone else's podcast, and just by
Yep.
participating in a conversation that you probably wouldn't otherwise have. Like these types of conversations don't happen organically. It's just people are just too prone to just get off topic and just be more like, I guess, friendly and casual versus like having a serious conversation the whole time. But
Right.
the amount of, if I was to now be tasked with writing blog posts or LinkedIn posts for myself, I mean, I could come up with 10 post ideas just from what we discussed today. It's just like someone holding you in your seat with duct tape and social pressure to now have brainstormed 10 ideas. Like maybe you've even in your own mind clarified some of your ideas and principles and confirmed to yourself, actually, this is why I do it, and this is why. Like it's beneficial even to yourself of helping you be forced to spend the time practicing thinking through your own ideas and values, which then become material you can use for yourself later on in your own writing, if not clips directly.
Absolutely. I mean, this is coming from someone that used to spend probably 3 to 4 hours a week coming up with new LinkedIn content when I was writing like long form LinkedIn posts, like 5,000 word LinkedIn posts. I was spending 3 to 4 hours a week just coming up with like two or three posts. Now I spend 1 hour a week doing a podcast, and I get like 10 content pieces from that, right? So like just from like a time efficiency perspective, I'm better off. And then the content is more rich. You're listening in on a conversation. You're not reading this 5,000 word, uh, you know, pontification about why law firms should be using, these third party analytics tracking tools. It's like, no, here's a 30-second clip. I say it very succinctly. This is why you should be using this analytics tool at your law firm, right? And it's super punchy, super easy to get the info. And that's an hour of my time a week. I can easily continue to allocate an hour of my time, probably a little more, to doing that type of work. So it's been a great addition to our marketing toolkit this year.
I love it. Well, that's a great place to wrap up. I'll obviously leave a bunch of links and everything below, but you're active on LinkedIn, you're active on YouTube. Obviously, Pareto is its own business. If you want to check that out, if there's lawyers among us in the audience, anything you'd add there, maybe the best of all those places for people to check out.
Yeah, go to legal.paretoppc.com. If you click on the book a call tab there or button there, you'll be able to book time directly on my calendar, and we can talk about ways that we could potentially help your firm.
Appreciate it. Well, thanks for the time, and always good to connect.
Thanks, Lewis.